Hello, everyone. Good morning. Hello. We've now gone live. First of all, can I say a big thank you to the Virtual Village Hall for inviting me to come along and do some sign language teaching this morning and a bit of deaf awareness training. So thank you for the opportunity. I really do hope that you enjoy watching and joining along. Before I go any further, you can see me signing on screen. Now, my name is Anthony, which is obviously a bit strange for you because I have a female voice. My female voice is Janet, who's the interpreter for this session. And the reason why I have an interpreter with me is that I am in British Sign Language, and Janet, and please don't worry, I'm going to be teaching you throughout the session. And when we get into the back, I'm just going to keep going for 1 or 2 minutes at the start to make sure everybody's joined in who would want to. It's always good to do that at the start of a live session. Just to let you know, I live in Belfast. That's where I'm from. And the weather here in Belfast is pretty nice today. The sun is shining, which is a bit of a relief because I think we've had every kind of season over the past wee while. In April, we've had snow, we've had hail, absolutely everything. I don't know if you remember the start of lockdown last year when we had those gorgeous blue skies and that lovely hot weather. We were running around in shorts and t-shirts. And a year later, we've got snow and freezing cold temperatures. Fingers crossed, by the time we get to the summer, that's when we'll hit the proper heat. I do hope that you can all hear the interpreter okay. If there are any problems, please just let us know in the comments box and we'll see those coming up as we go along. Okay, let's get started. First of all, when we talk about sign language, it's important to understand what that is. Sign language is the language used by people who are deaf and by a lot of other people who have learned it because it is actually a language. It was officially in 2003. And it's a really incredible time for the deaf community because it led to a lot of changes for us. Sign language itself is a language. Now, most of you probably only have spoken languages, English, French, or Spanish. Sign language is also a language, but it is visually motivated. It has its own grammar, it does have its own syntax and structure and everything that every other language has. But all of those things are different and they are not the same as just using English and throwing signs in on top. Now, because it's visual, it's actually a really beautiful language. And I think very often there's a misunderstanding. People seem to have the idea that it's of lesser status or lesser ability. It's not. It is a full language and it operates the same as any other language would do. So if you're going to learn British Sign Language, then you will do the same as any other language. You go through levels. You start off with an introduction, do a level 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you can get up to level 6, which is the equivalent of a degree level. And what I want to do is get started a little bit of teaching, and then we'll go back in and out of some understanding about the language at the same time. I really do hope you enjoy this. When I start teaching, it would really help me if you could just join along as much as possible. Thank you. So Well, here's the sign for welcome. Can you do that? Welcome. And here is how are you? How are you? Now, the lip pattern is what's important here. Are you well? Now, a crucial element of sign language is facial expression. And within British Sign Language, known as BSL, it's a really important element. You must use your face. People often think that sign language is all about the hands. In reality, it's not. It's about this whole space. We talk about the signing space, but it includes your body language and your facial expression, and all of those have key features that are part of the language. Let me give you an example of why. If we're talking about the rain, you could say it's drizzling, or you could say it's raining, or you could say it's pouring. So let me show you how you would sign those things. That was drizzle. There's rain. And look, it's pouring. So did you see the difference for each of those? It's a visual language. Now let's come back to that question. And let me show you the difference between the first and the second one. And just watch very carefully. Did you see the difference between the two times that it did it there? The lip patterns must be involved, and the facial expression must match the content and the meaning of what you're saying. Let's go through that one more time. So we've got the questions, and let's go through some responses to the questions. So again, if you could sign along with me when I go through these. So that was I'm good, thanks. There's the question. Are you well? And the answer. I'm good, thanks. Just watch this time and copy along, sign along. Well done, everyone. So let's go through some other ones now, some more responses that you may want to use. The next one is I'm happy. Moving on down, we've got this one. I'm tired. And there's one more on the list, which is I'm stressed. So if you just keep watching, I'm going to go through the question and the response, and just watch this time, the whole way through. So well done again, everyone. I know that it's interesting the first time you go through this. What we're going to do this time is I'm going to assign a question to you, and I want you to assign your response back to me. So just pick whichever one you want to assign back to me. And when I assign to you, then you answer. Don't worry about getting it right the first time. Bear in mind, if it is only your first time, then it might be a bit strange. You're using your hands, your facial expression, and body language in a different way. But once you get into the way of it, obviously it does become much more natural over time. So if everyone's ready, let's get going. One more time. Well done, everyone. So we've got started, which is always really important. So if you do come across someone who's deaf, then it's really nice if you can actually go up to them and ask them just that normal introductory question, isn't it? How are you? And that will really open doors and make them much more relaxed about talking to you. Don't be nervous about doing that, about the fact that you don't know how to sign everything. Even on that level, you will get a really positive response. Okay, let's move on now to the alphabet. Now, the alphabet is really important because it can be used in so many circumstances. If you have a word that you don't know how to sign, you can always spell it out letter by letter. And if you meet someone who's deaf, then they'll be happy to, if you can fingerspell the word to them, they'll give you the sign for it. So it's really important that you get your head around how to sign the alphabet. So let's get ready to take the whole alphabet on board, every letter. Now it's useful for you to start off with the vowels. Let me show you the vowels. Here's the letter A, then E, I, O, and U. Let's go through the vowels again. Sign along with me. A, E, I, O, and U. Now, everybody always asks which hand they use for that. I write with my right hand. And what I want you to do is imagine that your writing hand is the one that does most of the movement. And your other hand becomes a bit like the page. Okay? So I'm right-handed, which means that I am pointing onto the other hand more. If you're left-handed, the other way around. The left hand does all the movement towards the right hand, which becomes like the page. If everybody's ready, let's get started and do the vowels. A. Now we're on to the letter B. There's B. C. Again, if you're right-handed, the letter C will be in your right hand because it does most of the movement. If you're left-handed, it'll be in the left hand doing the C because that does most of the movement. So C on your dominant hand. D. E. F. G. H. I. J. K. Again, the right hand does most of the moving, so the index finger bends over in the right hand and moves over to the index finger on the left hand. Unless you're left-handed, in which case the other way around. L. M. N, O, P, Q, R, S, two little fingers for the S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Whew. Did you get through all that? Well done, everyone. So I'm going to go through all of that again one more time. Everybody ready? You sign along. That's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Please don't worry if it all feels too much, if you can't remember all that. A very simple language BSL alphabet chart. Just Google on BSL finger spelling and there'll be lots of options available for you, so you can go back over that and practice in your own time. And even print it out, practice it, think of what you could spell out. And the more you practice, the easier it will become, and the more easy it'll be to remember. Now, we're going to move on. We're going to go, first of all, go back over what we've done, and then we'll move on. So now we're looking at the what is your name sentence. Now, it starts with the last word, which is name. Name. Then we have the question form, which is what. And we also need to cover all the pronouns. So I want you to copy me on the pronouns. So this is I or me. You. You singular, and then he, she, they. Now, we've got to cover pointing here because it's a crucial part of the language. These are language features. You. I appreciate that from your perspective, it may be someone, and that may feel uncomfortable. Very much part of our language, part of our culture is we use pointing as a reference to go back and forward, different places and people. So in this sentence, what is your name? I want you to watch very carefully because I do need to remind you that BSL has a grammar that is not the same as English. It has a syntax and an order that is a little bit different from English. And so when I sign this sentence, you'll see it differently. Now, you'll be used to what is your name, but in sign language, the question is tagged at the end of the sentence. So if you're ready, copy me and just go with it, please. It will be slightly unusual. Let's do that again. And one more time. Great. So we have the question, what is your name? That was the way you sign, what is your name? And let's do the response. So here's the response. So the response is, my name is Anthony. Go watch really carefully how it's done. You've plenty of time, so don't rush through carefully. And one more time. I hope that's a little bit more clear for you now in terms of how we ask questions and how we answer. Please don't worry if you don't know how to spell your own name yet. I was just using mine, for my name is Anthony. But as I've mentioned earlier on, Google, you'll find the alphabet chart and you can practice away at that one. Get your own name inserted in the answer. So now I'm going to ask you a question and I want you to respond to that question. So the question, are you ready for it? What is your name? Watch the way it's signed and then answer. And again, one more time. So well done everyone for signing along there. I know it's not easy the first time you do this. And it is just like any other language, spoken or signed. At the start, it feels really a bit tough. But once you get into it and practice over time, it all becomes much more comfortable and you will get more used to it. And you'll get a much clearer idea of how this language works and how to go about using it. And like anything else, the more you practice, the better you'll get. Okay. I'm trying to tell you what I'm going to do, but I got mixed up on which side I was on there. So I'm on this side. Right. I'm now going to teach you this. The question there is, where do you live? Now, remember with questions, we start with the first most important thing first, which is live. So there's the sign for live. The question is, where do you live? Here's the sign for live. Middle finger to your chest, shoulder, live. In sign language, we tag the question at the end of the sentence. There's the sign for where. Where? So the question is, where do you live? Watch very carefully how we sign the full sentence. And sign along with Anthony. One more time. And again, let's do it one more time together. And that was the question, where do you live? So the answer is going to be, I live in, and then we'll go through the options. So I'm going to do, I live in Belfast. So the sign for Belfast is this. That's Belfast. Can you do that? Belfast. And then the next place is Dublin. So there's a sign for Dublin too. That's Dublin. And the next one on our list there is London. So here's the sign for London. Moving down, we have Glasgow. Huge Glasgow. And the bottom of the list has Cardiff. Cardiff. Okay, so I'm just going to repeat all of those place names one more time, starting off with Belfast, Dublin, London, Glasgow, and Cardiff. Now we're going to go through that question and the answer. So just watch carefully the first time I go through the whole thing. Question is, where do you live? And the answer is, I live in Belfast. So watch carefully this time. See if you can get it yourselves. Well done, everyone. Now I'm going to ask you the question, and I want you to sign back the answer. If you're ready, let's go. And again, one more time. Brilliant. Really well done, everyone. You've already learned a lot in just this short period of time. go back over everything. I will do that. But before that, I want to give you a little bit more information about sign language itself. For future, and give you a little bit of information about deaf people, how they live, what their careers are, and just try and give you a little bit more context. A long time ago, in 1880, there was a conference in Milan where a decision was made to ban sign language. It was done at that time because of a belief that in some ways sign language would damage deaf children's ability to learn speech. That was just an idea that was put out. But a decision was made to do that. In those days, deaf people were known as deaf and dumb, and that had a massive impact on society. And it led to a situation where deaf people really struggled, especially those who were profoundly deaf. Now, when I talk about profoundly deaf, I'm referring to the fact that there's different levels of hearing. Some people are moderately deaf. They've lost a little bit of hearing. Some people are hard of hearing. Some people are what's known as severely deaf. And then we have profoundly deaf. So those different levels will indicate how much people hear across a frequency range. Now, you know that with sight, not everybody sees the same or can't see the same. And it's the same with hearing. People have different types of hearing or hearing loss. So when a child is born deaf, if that child is, for example, hard of hearing, they will hear the sound of words coming in, which may help them to speak at a level that can be understood. It may help. They may be able to use the phone. A child who is severely deaf may also be able to hear enough intelligible sound to enable them to speak in a way that you may or may not understand. A child that is born profoundly deaf usually will not hear enough useful sound to enable them to develop speech that you would understand clearly. Because the way we produce speech is all based on the sounds that we can hear and get used to. So those different levels of deafness do impact on how people communicate. Deaf awareness is something that I would deliver training on across schools, hospitals, companies, etc. And very often, people come back at me with questions, which I find really interesting, around how deaf people communicate. And a lot of people will say that when they meet deaf people, maybe the first person they meet, they can communicate with fairly well. They have to slow down a bit, but the deaf person understands them and then speaks back to them. But they don't understand why they meet someone else who's deaf who doesn't understand them and that they can't understand their speech. And what people say to me is that they assume that that person has not worked enough on their speech or their lip reading, or has missed out on educational opportunities in some way. And that's why. I need to be very clear that that is not why. The main reason why it is you communicate with different deaf people in different ways is to do with the levels of hearing. Some people just don't ever get that incoming sound that enables them to do that, or opportunities to develop that, or they haven't had educational opportunities. There's lots of different factors involved. So the most important thing for you to be aware of the people will be able to lip read you and speak back. Some people won't. Some people will want to sign. That's why it's brilliant for you to learn sign language, because that means that you can communicate with any deaf person if you can get to the stage where you can communicate easily. Those deaf people who, can hear well and want to speak, sometimes will be happy to do that. But it can also be very difficult trying to lip read. Lip reading is a very tiring and intense task. And if you're in a group setting, no matter who you are, if you've got hearing loss, you're going to be missing out on what's being said. It can be really complicated. Some people may bluff and let on that they're hearing, especially in group settings, but they may not. Whereas with sign language, we've all got immediate access to each other. All of it. And I just think it's crucial that everybody starts to develop an understanding of both speech and sign language, so that when we're in the real world, we can communicate if we need to speak or lip read, but then if you can't hear enough to do that, you've got the option of using sign language, because that's just opening society up to everyone. And it means that people can communicate in a more relaxed and fluent way. So I think it's important for you to have that level understanding about the levels of deafness, about people's ability to hear sounds and therefore replicate them and speak. I also need to just mention that in terms of education for deaf children, it is very variable in terms of success. It's incredibly difficult for parents of a child that is born deaf. Any parent is going to struggle with the fact that their child is not the way they thought it was going to be. And if it's the first child in your family who's deaf, then you won't have the background information or understanding to know about the education system, how to communicate with that deaf child. I would never underestimate how difficult that is for parents. Just to make you aware, as someone who is deaf myself and who mixes all the time with other deaf people, I consider that I have a fabulous life. There are so many opportunities out there available nowadays to me and to my friends. Education is still something we need to work on. For parents, it's a very difficult choice. They have to decide whether or not to send their child to a local mainstream school or put them into a school that's special for deaf kids, where they will have some access to sign language. And that's very difficult. It's very challenging for parents knowing what's best around some of those big decisions. But this is all about creating opportunities in society and in life. And the main thing is for people to be comfortable and relaxed in their own communication. And if we can use both sign language and speech, then people have those opportunities. Focusing on one single medium can lead to difficulties later on in life, and pros and cons. Nowadays, there are so many opportunities and so much support available. And remember, I've said that sign language was only officially recognized in 2003. Now, since then, a lot of development opportunities have been created, but previous to that, it was much more limiting. And that's why we come back to that. But nowadays, when I talk about sign language, you can hear I have an interpreter working alongside me today. Before 2003, we wouldn't really have had that kind of access. There weren't as many interpreters. The funding for those interpreters wouldn't have been available. And so our ability to interact with wider society was limited and based on speech and trying to lip read. Now, using sign language, there's so many career opportunities available for people who have sign language. I have a deaf friend who is CFO in The Economist over in London. Chief Financial Officer. He is profoundly deaf, and he has 2 full-time interpreters working with him Monday to Friday. And he worked his way up, and he is now at that level. And it's fantastic to see the success that can be achieved. I have another friend who's deaf, a girl who lives in Glasgow, and she is profoundly deaf too, and she works as a doctor. So as I was saying, there are massive opportunities now that there weren't perhaps 100 years ago, even 50 years ago, where people wouldn't have had the ability to work their way up career ladders and progress within professions the way they can now. Nowadays, there's much more access to information, to education, early years opportunities, university opportunities, people accessing meetings, education, getting their qualifications is so much better now than it was before. And the other thing I will comment on is the reaction of society has changed. Attitudes are much more open-minded as people start to see deaf people engaging in society. But when we look back to the way things were 50 or 100 years ago, where people were seen as deaf and dumb, society has changed so much more nowadays, and deaf people are seen as people who have something to offer, and so much to offer wider society. So let's go back into the sign language teaching again at this stage. I'm going to start off by asking you some questions. Please don't panic if you immediately forget everything you've just learned, but just keep watching and joining in as much as you can. You ready? That was, how are you? What is your name? And where do you live? Now, I'm going to go through the questions one more time. Join in, find the questions and the answers. What is your name? Where do you live? Brilliant. Really well done, everyone. I'm going to go through the alphabet again one more time, right through. See if you can sign it along with me. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Right. So a little bit more information for you. Might be good if I just tell you something about myself and what has happened in my life and what my achievements have been. I'll keep it as brief as possible. I was born profoundly deaf. And like any other family, when I was born deaf, my parents were upset at the fact that I was deaf. I have an older brother who's not deaf, then I'm deaf, then I have two younger sisters, and they're not deaf either. So there's just me who's deaf in the family. And when I was born, my parents had no idea how to go about dealing with that. They worked hard, but it was difficult because you don't know what's happening. I was born pre-2003, where there was very limited information about what to do or sign language. And I was brought up using oral communication, speaking and lip reading. I went to the mainstream primary school, and when I went to primary school, I honestly, if I'm really genuine with you, struggled a lot to understand what was being said. Fortunately, my own personal life came from playing tennis. It was my hobby. And there was a court very nearby where we lived, and so I played tennis all the time with my brother. He played tennis as well. That became the focal point of my life. I was very serious in playing tennis, and I did very well. I played for Ulster and travelled across Northern Ireland, played in the tournaments across the different counties. And I got to the point where I was actually playing for Ireland in the mainstream circuit. And I was in the top 4 in the Irish circuit across the different age categories. At the age of 11, I had got to the top. I was in top 4 in Ireland at the age of 11. But that was the age when my parents made the decision to send me to a boarding school for deaf children, which was across the water over in England. The reason being that my parents wanted me to go to grammar school because then I could get GCSEs. And I couldn't get those in Northern Ireland. It was very difficult. So they made a very difficult decision because it meant I was sent away from my family. However, what I would say is I am so grateful that I did that and my parents made that decision. I made friends from all across the UK, even outside of the UK. Other European countries came to study there. It was amazing, brilliant opportunity. I loved it. I loved my life there. And I didn't miss home most of the time because I just enjoyed the fact that I was with people who were the same as me, shared a common identity with me. I learned sign language for the first time in my life. And for the first time, I could engage in group conversations easily. Can you imagine? Before that, I'd never been able to do that. With my own close family, I could just about manage, but any other group conversations, I couldn't engage in because you can't lip read different faces when they're all going at the same time. And so it meant that I was able to achieve much more in terms of my education, and my whole attitude and my own identity transformed. Now, I still played tennis, and I was selected to go to Spain, where they had professional training, and one of the professionals asked me to go to Barcelona, where I would then train to become a professional tennis player. And I had to face a massive life decision about whether I would stay on with my education or whether I would move to Spain to become a pro. And I made the decision of staying with my education. And when I look back, I would have been there with Nadal, with Federer, with Murray, with Djokovic. And can you imagine the competition? I'm so relieved I made the right decision to go and pursue my education, not compete with those guys. However, I did complete my education, went on to university, got a degree in sports science, and then after that I carried on at a later stage and got a PGCE in teaching. Whilst I was at university, I was also working as a tennis coach and gaining tennis coaching qualifications. So I'm now a very senior club coach, which means that I have a lot of qualifications behind me, which I'm very proud to say that I have and that has stamped me in good stead. As a tennis player, I was also traveling extensively across the world, and I had the opportunity of competing at the Deaf Olympics, where I got the gold medal. I'm still the only gold medalist from the UK to get that for tennis there. And I'm so grateful because that travel, those tennis experience gave me opportunities, which I think have stood me in really good stead throughout my life. I have worked really hard to get where I am. And in my career now, I run a tennis club. We run summer camps. I provide tennis coaching, tennis programs across a range of age groups. I teach sign language in a whole range of settings, school settings, primary and secondary school. I deliver deaf awareness training to try and raise the profile and understanding of deafness and deaf people and sign language. I love my career. I love my job. And the reason why I think it's important to say that is that you will come across deaf people who haven't had those opportunities. 2003 is still very recent. I know for some people watching it might feel like it's a long time ago, but in real terms, it's only recent. And it's only then that opportunities have been created. And there are generations before me who didn't have any access to interpreters or to educational opportunities. The boarding school I went to was incredible. They didn't have that. It all is developed in more recent time. I think it was established in 1970s or so. That's when the first opportunities were to go to that particular school over in England. So these things are fairly recent. And because I was able to go there, I was able to make friends from all over the place. And since then, that really enabled me to become someone. I have a real drive. I'm very competitive. And being part of a sports environment has encouraged me to use that drive, use that competitiveness to still achieve in life. And I've also made lifelong friends from school, and we drive each other forward as well. I consider myself an active part of the deaf community as well, and that's all been very positive for me. Life is all about opportunities for all of us, no matter who we are. Now, I think I've probably talked at you quite long enough. I don't want you falling asleep here whilst you're watching me. So I really hope that you have enjoyed learning some sign language today and learning a little bit about deaf people and how they live as well. If you're interested in learning any more sign language or anything else, have a look and you will see some more information. There are plenty of places out there that will offer an introduction to British Sign Language. And the introduction to BSL is a good starting point for anyone. Quite often it's delivered across 6-week sessions, sometimes 10-week sessions, just for an introduction. And once you've done that, then you can move on to working your way through the levels and proper levels, level 1, level 3, level 2, up to level 6. There's plenty of those out there in your own local area. Just have a look, do a bit of research, and you come across them. For those of you who are on Facebook, find me on under Sign Source Learning in Facebook. I have over 15,000 followers there. And so you're welcome to join me. It's a business page. And you'll find that really useful because you'll see there that I would do a lot of videos where I'm teaching sign language, where I'm explaining some of the rules of the grammar of the language. And also, you can see lots of videos of my 3 children. My kids are not deaf. My wife is not deaf. I'm deaf. I'm the deaf one in their family, but everyone in our family uses sign language. And those videos actually get a great response because people can't believe that that's the way our family is, our family dynamic is. My wife and I don't see people as deaf or not deaf. We see each other as individuals. We're human. That is the connection. And within our family, we use sign language. My wife has an English degree and other qualities. She married someone who she felt wasn't at her level. And so I think our marriage says an awful lot, and our family dynamic says an awful lot. I have 3 fantastic children, 2 boys and a girl. The boys are 6, 4, and the little one is 2. So there's 3 kids, and they speak if I'm not around, and they sign if I am. That's just the way it is. And so you'll find those videos interesting. We get a really interesting response from people watching that and seeing the family, and we're just a bilingual family that uses different languages. And I know that that's something that people from other countries are used to. People sometimes have French or Spanish if they live in those countries, and then also ask questions around how the kids learned. Kids just use language. Kids use language that's used in their family, and our kids have used sometimes speech, sometimes sign language. That's what they use. Have a look on Facebook and you'll see plenty of videos to get that conversation going. So, thank you for asking me to be part of the work that you're doing. And thank you so much to Janet for interpreting today as well. I hope that she has made the session clear for everyone. And I hope you've enjoyed what you've learned. If you do have any further questions, please do get in touch and contact Virtual Village Hall, and they can keep you informed if there's anything else that you want to know. You will have access to local sign language classes in your own area. Before I finish this session, let's go through the alphabet one more time, and then we'll draw it to a close. You ready? Everybody ready? So okay, just for one of the comments we can see coming in is the name of the Facebook page is Sign Source Learning. Sign Source Learning, just in case some of you missed that out. So Sign Source Learning, give it a like and you'll see lots going on there.